Welcome to Incomplete Thought. I'm joined today with my friend Zack Ellis.
How's
How
it
you
going,
doing,
everyone?
Zach?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Problem. And today we're going to be discussing some spoiler alert: Game of Thrones, old episodes, speculations of new episodes, and also some video games and a little bit of other things in there. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. How you doing this morning, man?
Doing great, man. Landed on a really good movie last night called The Darkest Hour.
Okay.
And it's like a historical tale of Winston Churchill leading up to the events of Dunkirk, and just really phenomenal acting. I think Winston was a really funny person and very much a character. And I think when they were like, okay, we're telling a story about all these conversations he had leading up to these big decisions and events, but you really kind of get to know him in those moments where he is kind of typing up his script to broadcast over the world and how they're going to handle Nazi Germany, and it was just like every moment it's just you're laughing and then you're like wow, and then you're laughing and you're like wow.
Yeah. My one of our friends, Sarah Beth, met at GW. Her boyfriend was a historian major, and he was actually going to work in like the museums. He said he loved that movie, and it's like he's like, if you're a history buff, that's what you're going to go for. It wasn't like because like Dunkirk and The Darkest Hour were released at the same time, so it was like. You either got a really big action war movie or you got the like planning and plotting and stuff like that. But I almost like the planning and plotting,
Yeah.
It's almost like that you could separate, like it was like they took a Quentin Tarantino movie and separated it, so you have like all the like little stuff that happens in between, and then you got the big action parts, so like that's all I could think of. I was like, oh, so it would be like Inglourious Bastards, but Dunkirk is like all the action. Inglorious, like the Bastards part, and then The Darkest Hour is like, the setting up the story, I guess, as far as that goes. So
yeah,
cool. But you liked it?
Oh, phenomenal! And I was telling my mom, like, I'm like, I would definitely be down for watching this again, like next week, And I don't say that with too many movies. I find that a lot of movies, like, okay, I liked it, but I wouldn't see it again. But I think. You're just enjoying listening to the conversations and then like kind of being, what I mean? I think just the fact that it's one of those films where, because you do laugh a lot, the people for being who they are, it's like you also are willing to like, I don't know. The pacing was really good. I think it's really cool when you get to listen to someone who's really good at giving speeches.
Right.
And, I think Gary Oldman did a pretty miraculous job at, just getting the mannerism down, the inflection, everything that was right. But I think that's what also is great is like, okay, cool. This is pretty, down to the T in terms of what happened. They were really sticking to how it was played out, moment by moment. But, it was just... it's a great precursor to Dunkirk. Like you were saying, it's just Dunkirk was very much an action movie. It's not a story about words. It's a story about things that are being done.
Right. But, exactly.
But this was more like human interaction at a I don't know, just a different movie.
Yeah, but you enjoyed it, and that's the important part. Like that you enjoyed it, and like you said, you'd watch it again, right? Like you want to watch it with your. Yeah, I had the similar thing. While we're on seeing new movies, well, me and Sarah Beth went and saw Black Klansman, the new Spike Lee movie.
Okay.
Same thing. Really good. That was my first Spike Lee movie, and that was like, I was like, because I had no idea of his artistic style or like how he shot movies or played the movie out. But man, same thing. Like I was like, oh, I'd go see this like 3 or 4 times. Great movie. Like I almost want to like Venmo you some money so you can go check it out. Not that you need money, but right. You know how like very hit or miss when people suggest movies and stuff like that, where it's like, you know, you're really into it and you want the other people to enjoy it, but they'll sometimes not like take the bait on it because they're like, it's not my thing, you know, like
Right.
if somebody, because I didn't know Spike Lee directed this movie at all. I just saw the title and I like read up on it a little bit, and I was like, oh, this sounds hilarious, you know. So we go in and check it out, and then it's a Spike Lee. And a few years ago, I had like written Spike Lee off because of the whole like Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino beef that he had, and him and Samuel L. Jackson. So it's like, I was like, I don't want to see that movie, but you know. And after I saw the movie, I was telling my dad about it, and he's like, "Oh, you've never seen Spike Lee? He had like Inside Man and When the Levee Breaks, and like all these different movies that I now want to go back and check out." And you know, so, but yeah, suggesting movies to people can sometimes be hit or miss because they're like, I don't know.
Yeah,
You know?
I feel like if you're going to hold someone's attention, it's got to be
Right.
able to carry the same magnitude as a song, you know?
Yep.
And I feel like
Exactly.
that's kind of, I guess, how a movie is for us. If it hits all the right notes in all the right places, then it's like, whoa, you know, I think I can enjoy it just as much the second time around than I did the first.
Right.
You know, and I think it just gets better as you continue to revisit it.
Exactly. And the thing with movies and, like you said, songs is like everybody's got different tastes, so it's hard to figure out what that other person's taste or what you might perceive that person's taste. So when you suggest it to somebody and they're like, I didn't like that song, or I didn't like that movie, you're like, oh, but it was so good. Which I think, and I'm sure you've had run-ins with it, trying to get people to watch Game of Thrones. What was it like for you to get people to watch Game of Thrones? Was it kind of like you had to explain a little bit but not give things away? Like, what was that like?
Oh, wow. Well, I would say for the most part, most people had already seen the show or seen some of the show, and they were already, you know, we were already talking characters and premise and story arcs. But for those who I've bumped into who haven't seen it, it's usually the other argument saying, no, I don't like the nudity, I don't like the sex, I don't like the violence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
A lot in the show.
I feel like most people who I've come to encounter with, they are either, I've heard of it, I know of it, I just choose not to watch it, you know.
Right.
But I think of the few who I have met, they're usually like, oh, what's that about? And I'm like, well, you know, it's a medieval period piece. Well, not really a piece, because
no, because it's fantasy. It's fantasy.
Right,
yeah,
right.
It's fantasy.
But it's very realistically grounded, and there's this and that, and they're usually like, no, I don't think I can relate to that. It's just not very modern set, but I think you kind of have to be open to watch it. Like people who go and see films that are set in certain times, and then there are films for people who are like, no, I'd just rather see something, you know, that I can believe in, that, you know what I mean? It doesn't go into, you know what I mean? Like long stories from way back.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
what about you?
My first experience was like, so, and I'm a little ashamed to say it, but not really, because I think like everybody was doing it, or at least like the people who couldn't afford an HBO account. So I used to work in a kitchen, and there was this guy, and he was another cook, and he always had the ability to go out and like get TV shows from like piratebay.com, or like, you know, like the pirating type of thing.
He was just a click away.
Yeah, and so me and him would like talk comic books, we talk Star Wars, we talk all this other stuff, and like he was like telling me about this show, and he's like, oh, it's just called Game of Thrones, and I was like, that was around, and when he was talking to me about it, it was around the time that like Downton Abbey was out. So I'm like immediately like, is it Downton Abbey type of style, like a Game of Thrones? It sounds very soap opera-ish when you hear the title. So I was like, yeah, fuck that. I gotta watch that. And he's like, dude, you just gotta. He's like, I'm not gonna spoil anything for you. He's like, they're books. There's been people excited for the show for a long time, and you can really see it. Like I mean, the amount of budget they got for that first season. Like, so for, I'll continue with the story. So like he talks me into watching it, and I was dating another girl at this time, and so me and her sit down to watch it. And again, spoiler alert, people. Like you see it, and then immediately the imagery is just setting up, and you're like, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was gonna be. Like, the first people you come in contact die, like within 5 minutes.
Right.
First people, it's very snowy. It's very and I'm sitting there like, man, they must have been fucking cold shooting this shit, because it's so like it's all winter, and they're wearing these old timey clothes that
Right.
hopefully that's insulated on the inside, but and then some of them have to be in no clothes because they're like walking.
Wow.
They're fucking zombies, right? Like,
yeah.
So you're like, oh fuck, that's no shit. So, but like we were watching it, and again, I was like in and out, kind of checking my phone, like doing all this stuff, and like it gets to the end scene, like, and again, spoiler alert, I see two blonde people banging, and then I'm like, oh, what the fuck? And I look up, and of course it's sex. So I'm like, oh, what? And I'm checking it out, and I see there's this kid watching it. I was like, oh, okay. And I figure, like nothing's gonna happen, or whatever. And the blonde dude just all of a sudden pushes the little kid out the window. I was like, wait, what the fuck? Hold on. And then my girlfriend at the time had been paying attention the whole episode, so she's like, oh my god. And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea. So I had to go and rewatch the first episode at a later date. She's like, no. So, like, mind you, this is 9:00 at night. We both have to work the next morning. She's got two little kids that we have to get up with too. And so I'm like, well, I'll watch it tomorrow. And she's like, well, I'm just going to watch one more. And like, I don't know, it was like 5 a.m. I wake up and she comes in and she throws me the little hard drive that he sent with me and was like, yeah, I just watched the whole first season. You're going to have to get up with the kids. So wow. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, all right. So I ended up rewatching, and then I got why she sat down and fucking blew through the whole season that whole night, because she just could not stop, and she had to wait for him to like get us the second season, because like at this point I think it was season 3 had just come out, and we had just avoided all spoilers for we just anytime we saw Game of Thrones,
locked your windows, locked your doors,
yeah,
hid in the cave.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my first experience of Game of Thrones, and it is like, it's one of those things where you can't give away too much, and if you do, it spoils it, and then people end up not paying attention, or they have to be like into it. But you have your preconceived notions of what the show is going to be about, and then when you finally see it, you're like, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
So,
right.
But yeah, so what was your first take from that first episode? Like did somebody have to twist your arm to watch it, or was it? I
came to find out about the show. I think I was in my brother's what do you call it? It's like a fraternity house, at Georgia Tech, and I think someone had dropped the name off, and at that time I was like, okay. And then a little while later, I was doing some background work on the Hunger Games, the Mockingjay, and I was with a cool group of people, and people were just kind of throwing the name Game of Thrones around. I'm like, oh, what's that? And they were like, oh man, we can't really say. All we can tell you is you need to go and see it for yourself. I'm like, okay, is there anything that you can tell me so I know what I'm getting into? And they're like, just don't get emotionally involved. Like, don't feel like you have to be attached to a character, because, I think the show will, disappoint you. Yeah, and I was like, okay, let me just kind of go in as an observer, not as, like, someone who's like, I'm already invested. But I think what you had said about the kid falling out the window, that kind of left the impression like, wait, I got to see this to the end now. Like, you don't just you don't push a kid out a window and then like. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't. You have to know.
I completely missed the part that there was a brother and sister fucking. That's where I was like,
oh yeah.
Oh, I was like, I just thought it was like a